look at the future of ISIS after the fall of Mosul, which was their one major stronghold in West Asia for at least the last 2 years. Welcome back, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, who is the head of the Jindal School of International Affairs. Dr. Chaulia, it says that we cannot see the future, but we can make assumptions based on the past. Now, what Mr. Ahmed has brought out, I fear, and this is the assumption of many geostrategists, that whichever way the battle goes, it is not the destruction of the ISIS's fighting capabilities on the ground at Mosul or elsewhere that matters as much as the post-conflict division of turfs and who we'd like to control. Apparently, the Turks are very keen to have a great say in the future administration of some of these areas. As we know, the military push is being led, amongst others, by the Peshmerga of the Kurdish fighting forces, who've been terrific in taking these guys on in the last 2 years. At the same time, there is the Iraqi stake that is involved out there, and then there are other players and stakeholders there. So, in a geostrategic sense of the territorial distribution, what is going to be the future course of events in the next 6-7 months?
Yeah, ISIS is now shrunk to around 65,000 square kilometers. It used to be approximately 91,000 square kilometers in terms of total control just about a year and a half ago. So they have lost out about 30% or so, and more is coming. So in that sense, it's melting, and it will indeed retreat to the desert and so on. But they're also launching surprise attacks in other towns which are not as strategically important as Mosul, but simply to make this a stand. And the jihadist mentality is that we'll go down fighting, we'll die and become martyrs. And because it's a very apocalyptic kind of organization, they believe that the struggles are still coming. So if you see last few weeks, as Mosul is under pressure, they've been trying to take other cities. Rutba is one area they've just taken over on the western side, closer to the Syrian border. They have attacked Kirkuk, which exactly falls into this maelstrom of competing interests. There is Kurdish interest there, there are Turkomans there, there are Arab Shiite as well as Sunni Arabs who are vying for position there, and it's oil rich. So ISIS is try to make dents into these kind of new areas, and ISIS will always thrive on divisions among various tribes as well as Sunni factions and the Shia Sunni division in general. So they are, I think, going to look at trying to wait it out. If you remember 2007, the precursor of ISIS, Al-Qaeda in in the Arabian Peninsula also had found setbacks, but then it recovered and reformulated and reincarnated itself as ISIS. So from Al-Qaeda in Mesopotamia to ISIS, there was a hiatus of 6 years. They're looking at regrouping. If you see the ISIS propaganda, they're saying the time is low right now, but we are going to have sleeper cells, we're going to attack some cities by surprise, but we'll stay in the desert, we'll come back stronger, and eventually we will retake the, rebuild the caliphate.
Dr. Chaulia, it is said that the ISIS is obviously going to try and reach out to where there are possible sympathizers. And in recent months and the last year or so, we've seen that there have been attacks in Philippines and in Dhaka, and also some kind of an alert in Malaysia and Singapore about them wanting to set up a vilayat out there. So quite clearly, Southeast Asia, more than South Asia, is something that they are wanting to focus on, though there is a school of thought that says that they may just go and be pushed out of West Asia and come into Afghanistan and the AfPak region. What's your take?
Yeah, mind you though that Egypt is one country in West Asia where they still have a base in the Sinai, and they have significant support there and have been causing huge losses to the Egyptian military regime through kind of a long-running insurgency. Libya, they are on the run. So yes, mostly they will be out of the Middle East in the sense as territorial possession goes, but there is a branch, so-called ISIS branch in eastern Afghanistan, Nangarhar province, and they have been claiming some spectacular attacks in Kabul as well. Even in Pakistan, in Quetta, where there is so much violence and multiple jihadist attacks, IS has named itself as the perpetrator. So these cannot be ruled out. Southeast Asia, yes, if you go take again a leaf out of history, Al-Qaeda, which at one point used to be the numero uno in the jihadist world, used to also have a number of so-called affiliates or branches in Southeast Asia, where there are, especially in southern Thailand, in southern Philippines, there have been long festering grievances of Muslim minorities against non-Muslim, perceived non-Muslim majority regimes. So I think ISIS does have some potential to try and rake up those issues. Europe, we cannot rule it out because we have seen a string of attacks this year, and they may go back to that playbook of frightening the wits out of the Europeans through jihadist attacks, and the European structures are still vulnerable and not foolproof, although they have stemmed the tide for now. So I think we got to be alert worldwide, and you cannot really pinpoint to one region, but certainly ISIS, the ideology, the mindset is certainly because they play into the grievances and somehow connect what is happening.
There are senior NIA officials in India who have gone on record to say that the ISIS presents a bigger threat to Indian stability and security than even Pakistan-based jihadi groups. I personally am not yet convinced, but maybe you may be able to convince us. Two, the ISIS has gone on to fundraising efforts in India, reported by a major broadsheet newspaper, which even talks of getting Bollywood and Bollywood stars and others funding ISIS-related initiatives. Three, that in Kerala in particular, the spillover effect of the culture of the Middle East is not just a cultural spillover, despite a lot of Malayali workers going from Kerala, living in the Middle East, coming back and starting to wear attire which is similar to their Arab friends and counterparts. But there is now transfer of funds, a certain amount of recruitment drive that has been taking place.
We have to be on alert, especially because, as we know, if you look at the history of ISIS, first it was an insurgent movement, then it was a kind of a proto-state or a caliphate. Now it is turning more towards terrorist tactics, which was the classic Al-Qaeda, because it is losing territory. So the third phase is dangerous for a country like India, because unlike the Pakistan-based jihadist groups, which can largely cause mayhem and recruit people closer to our borders, this can be an all-India phenomenon because of the internet and because this can be permeable. So Kerala, which in the past has not particularly been touched, let's say, by Lashkar-e-Taiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed, can easily become a prey to an ISIS, which is much more global in its propaganda value, and which can actually easily crisscross borders through airwaves, through the internet, and so on. So I think we've got to be watchful and actually check this menace. Kerala especially is worrisome because the northern part, there have been scenes of ghettoization of some communities, and who youth sometimes then get misled. And there is a lot of wealth coming in from the Middle East, but as you said, also conservative values and Wahhabi, Salafist kind of thinking as well. So India, I think, will remain vulnerable because end of the day, there is a saturation point to what the Pakistanis can do to us. It's a conventional, at the end of the day, it's a state beside us. But ISIS is like a proto-state that is dissolving and becoming widespread in a different sense. They want to enter the minds of people, and that is where the